Political and of course current affairs program where we touch on different sectors that actually borders on Nigeria's development and also growth. Today we're going to be looking at the education sector, specifically basic education in Nigeria. My name is Omoife Peace Osemere, and of course I will be having this conversation with an educationist, Comrade Daniel Akonde, from Save Public Education Campaign Nigeria. But just to give a quick background to the conversation this morning, the Nigerian government's decision to allocate 60 billion naira for the national homegrown school feeding program in the 2025 budget is part of its efforts to improve education and nutrition among children. Now, the program, which was launched in 2016, aims to provide meals to pupils in public primary schools across the country. And the program has been implemented in several states, with reports indicating that it has improved school enrollment and attendance rate. Now, the 2025 budget allocation for the national homegrown school feeding program is 60 billion naira, although some sources indicate that the allocation is actually 100 billion naira, because quite frankly, the figures, have been quite conflicting. Looking at the reports, from some of the Nigerian newspapers, one actually reported 100 billion naira and another 60 billion naira. Now, the program aims to feed over 10 million pupils in public primary schools across the country, and the government has reportedly spent around 12 billion naira monthly on the program. Now, the school feeding program is part of the government's efforts to improve education and nutrition among children and has been implemented in several states. Now, a number of Nigerians have been expressing, their reservations with regards to this, amount of money, allocated just to feed, school children by way of, improving school enrollment and also attendance rates. Now, some are saying that is this a case of misplaced priority, or how best can this really be explained? But can this be justified at all? Now, these are the issues we're going to be looking at this morning on Eagles Outlook, and I have my guest who will be joining us live via telephone this morning, Comrade Daniel Akonde, Save Public Education Campaign. Good morning to you, Comrade. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning for having me here. Thank you very much.
All right. Will it be okay for me to address you as an educationist? Do you mind?
Just address me as a comrade.
Okay, comrade.
I'll be fine with that, yeah.
That's right. And Happy New Year to you. I mean, we're having you on the show for the first time this year.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. Before we, start off the conversation in earnest, I mean, it's okay for us to reflect on, the previous year, that's 2024. I mean, we just said goodbye to 2024 a couple of days back, and the lessons are still being, looked at or even reflected on. So for you as a comrade, how would you describe Nigeria's basic education in the year 2024?
Thank you very much for having me once again. It's not an understatement if I say that the state of education in Nigeria has generally been a state of comatose. That in the last previous years, we have experienced a lot of deficiency in terms of everything in terms of the education sector. The inadequate funding, the shortage of teachers, the question of student loan, the outdated curriculum, the question of HND, BSc dichotomy, everything has been on the deficit in the past period.
All right. So for you, we didn't make any gain or record gains at all. I mean, in the year 2024, even with the emergence of the student loan.
The question around it is that how transparency is the question around the student loan itself. Nigerian students have clearly stated that what they wanted is not a student loan. It's not another loan burden on the already depressed Nigerian students. And what they want is student grants. And as we speak today, for instance, the University of Abuja, people are unable to even access the student loan. They said they brought about the registration around the second semester last year. And people are registered, 90% of people that are registered did not even find their name on that list. So what Nigerians want is a student grant, not a student loan. And of course, even if we have the student loan on board, how many of the Nigerian students are being able to access that loan as we speak? That one is another challenge to all of us. So it's very important to state that the scheme itself is one of the schemes which has been put forward by the Nigerian government to further commercialize education and price education out of the reach of the common man or the children of the common man in the country. So there is nothing to even be enthusiastic about in the question of the student loan that will be put forward by the Nigerian government. In short, the Nigerian students that we had meetings in the last few days are continuously decrying, and they have been concerned about this so-called student loan. The question of education now, most of the universities have increased their tuition fee, most of the institutions have increased their tuition fee, and yet the minimum wage still stands still at what it is, even though it has been increased to 70,000 naira minimum wage. But that itself has not been implemented at most of the states.
All right, comrade. I mean, we just had to digress, and apparently you are indeed abreast with, latest development. Just not just from the basic, education, angle, but even tertiary education. You are apparently, abreast with the trends there. But thank you so much for giving us that insight. Now, coming back, to the crux of the matter, because we're focusing basically on basic education this morning. What were some of the challenges really, and how did these challenges impact basic education in the year 2024?
Thank you very much. The basic education in the country, there are so many issues that the basic education system itself has been confronted with. And in this year 2024, I think with what we have seen on ground, there will be no difference in the approach, and there will be no difference in the result. Because as we speak, the federal government has put forward the budget for this 2025. And the amount that was budgeted for education sector is practically 70%. 7%. It's practically 7%, about 3.52 trillion naira, which itself is not sufficient, which itself is not enough to have a quality education in this country. The UNESCO itself has pegged it as between 15 to 21% for the underdeveloped country. But what we have seen is just 7% of these has been budgeted for education in this country. And that itself means that what we are going to see in the coming period will not be different from what we have seen in the past. As we speak, the number of out-of-school children has continued in the northern part of the country. And the reason being that, first and foremost, they don't even have quality teachers. Because education in Nigeria, people that are into teaching now, they thought it's just the last hope for them. It's not because they have the company. Most of them actually wanted that job. While most of the teachers in part of the country were early teachers, were paid patchy 9,000 naira, 8,000 naira on the monthly basis. That itself cannot even encourage the teachers to teach to the best of their capacity.
Okay, so how has that contributed to the number of out-of-school children in Nigeria?
I can't get to that question, please.
Yes, I'm asking that how has that contributed, to the number of out-of-school children in Nigeria, the absence of quality teachers?
It's all linked. The crises are all linked with each other. Okay. The question of insecurity also contributed. Why most of the parents knows that most of the schools in the northern states, as we speak, we have heard about so many kidnapping cases in most of our schools in the northern part of the country. And that itself linked directly or indirectly with the question of government not prioritizing education by properly funding education and also equipping the teachers with enough tools or with enough knowledge on how to undertake all of these children, how to teach all of these children, and also the working condition. What are the facilities that are made available in those schools are also very extremely important for all of us to begin to discuss. The question of out-of-school children in the north have come across so many issues that actually come to together in one. I've stated the question of insecurity. I've stated the question of the teachers themselves not motivated. I've also talked about the condition of the living of the teaching facilities, which are currently in the state of decadence in most of the schools in the north. So I think all of this actually linked to each other and actually contributed significantly to the number of acts of school children. As we speak,
right,
if teacher want to teach in the school, and we have not eaten, as we all know that hunger is the current reality in Nigeria, and the teacher is not well fed, he or she cannot even feed either morning breakfast or lunch or dinner. And we think that kind of teacher will give all of his or our efforts in teaching students. That is everything that what you put forward is what we get. You should properly invest in all of these teachers. The opportunity that we are going to get maximum results is there. But of course, this has not been done. And of course, in this 2025, with current budget that was allocated to education, it also shows that there wouldn't be any fundamental change from what we have seen in the past. Thank you.
All right, comrade, let me take you back a little bit. For you, the government, hasn't really been able to prioritize, education. Now, does this actually cut across basic, secondary, and tertiary education in the country, or just basic education?
It covers across not only every ranks of the education system. It even comes across every other important sector of the economy. The social services, which include education itself, and also the healthcare. If you see what was put forward for healthcare sector this year, is about 2.something trillion naira, which itself is an indication that if you don't have money in this country to patronize the private-owned hospitals, you are either committed to eternal debt already with the kind of budgets that have been put forward for that sector. So it does not only come across the education sector; it's both primary, secondary, and tertiary. It comes across the three. It also comes across every important key sector of the economy that could make the life or the mass of working people and that of the children and the students better.
Okay, but comrade, when you take a look at the amount of monies that have been spent over the years on, feeding school children, isn't that a pointer to the fact that the federal government is not actually resting or even relenting, by way of ensuring that our children are in school? This year, we understand that 60 billion naira is actually budgeted or has been allocated, for the National Homegrown School Feeding Program for the year 2025. And it's actually part of efforts to improve education and nutrition among children. So looking at these monies or amount of monies that we're talking about here, isn't that more than enough, perhaps a reason to give the government a pat on the back for doing its bit, just to ensure that basic education is actually secured in the country?
If you ask me about the school feeding, the school nutrition feeding of primary schools, I will tell you that it's just a conduit, another means for the government of the day to also siphon the public resources. Why I don't have a clear statistics or evidence to back how the money in the previous period has been spent in that regard. But I was close to the similar program that was conducted by the Arebeshola regime in Osun State, and I knew what went through and what were done in that scheme. But the point is also that the fundamental basics of how the education could be improved, how the children could be also be given that opportunity or that boldness to even on their own be enrolled in school has been neglected in the first place. The first affair of it is that in this government has popularized the parents of these children. Government has not prioritized the security sector that will make their lives to be secure even if they attend the education. That government cannot tell us that what you want to use to attract people that will be killed while in school, people or pupils that will be kidnapped while in school, What you use to attract them to come to school is just the feeding program, which itself is not transparent in all of his conduct or in all of those in all of the exercise. But of course, as I told you, I don't have a clear data to support that. But the last year, I think about 100 billion was allotted to that department. What happened? Why 100 billion was allotted last year, and 60 billion was given to that sector for that purpose this year? What's different? It means that if we look at it, it's either something went wrong, or maybe the money was not exhausted last year. Then they should tell us what the balance is, because they are budgeting lower than what was budgeted last year for this same purpose. But that's not even the bone of contention. The bone of contention is that the school itself is not safe for children to be enrolled, to school, to study. And also that the teachers, who will primarily be the people that will take a lot of these students that will teach them, they themselves are not properly fed. They are not properly being encouraged. As we speak, most of these schools they don't even have sufficient numbers of teachers. Why those teachers they were recruited on casual basis were being given a paltry amount of money, like I said. I've had the testimony where a teacher or in the north said he's collecting 8,000 naira in a month. How does that one translate, or how will that one make life better for anybody that is going to teach anybody in this country? Myself and you we know the current the current rate of inflation, data of inflation in this country. The trading economics just told us around November that the current inflation in Nigeria is about 34.6%. And that itself is extremely high because the government has prioritized commercialization of education. It has prioritized all of the deficits, all of the problematic economic system.
Just about you, comrade. I mean, for you to say that the government has actually commercialized education in Nigeria, it actually speaks volumes. The reason, as we've been made to understand, as to why there have been hike in tuition fees across schools in Nigeria and other educational needs, is probably because of the hike in the prices of fuel and other essentials. So is that really the making of the government? Because we've also seen private schools and even public schools. So if private schools are going to hike our school fees, should that also be obtainable across public schools in Nigeria, which ought to be even cheaper?
Well, the question is very simple. The education sector, the public education itself, what the Nigeria government is trying to do is to make it less attractive, just the way they've done to NFPC, to the power sector, to make it less attractive for the people to patronize. And that itself is what they have done. Because if we have government that has the interest of its people at heart, the first question why this inflation has gotten so high is because of the reckless policy of removing the free subsidy, like you have said. And what a reasonable government would have done is to bring back the fresh subsidy and make Nigeria to enjoy that only single privilege that Nigeria has been able to enjoy in the past. And because this privilege has been taken away from us. And yes, the government has promised the so-called I've forgotten that the term that they use while coming on board, a renewed hope. The government that promised a renewed hope will have listened to the mass of the working people and that of the students and reverse the free subsidy, first and foremost, and revitalize the existing refineries, even though they have come out that some refineries are now working.
Yes, the Port Harcourt and refineries are working. The refineries are working, comrade.
That's what we were told, that they are working. But the point is that the government will have invested more in revitalizing those refineries and build new refineries. So that all of this problem, the question of free subsidy in the first place, was because we were not producing locally what is sought.
I mean, it's okay for you to digress, but let's not lose sight of the issues on ground as we speak. I mean, and from a takeaway from your own analysis at this point in time is the fact that this home, grown school feeding program, by way of, encouraging and even improving education, and nutrition among children is really not realistic, and it is not enough to get the children, back to the classrooms. That's what you're saying.
Yes, that's what the English people call the white elephant project. It's not in its entirety relevant why it come across when we're talking about the priorities as to what we make the children well enrolled in school or to obtain a quality education. The first is to fund education properly. The second is to make sure that the education facilities are well constructed. The facilities are are up to the standards. And the third is also the question of the security.
Okay.
So the question of school feeding is just what they call a white elephant project, which itself is just some sort of roadshow.
Okay, so at this point in time, how would you now speak to the role of parents, in ensuring that, their children are actually in school? Because we've seen, is it just about poverty now, or it is deliberate or even intentional to keep these children away from school? Because for you, the government is not doing enough. But according to the government, they are doing, their best just to make sure that our children are in school. You take a look at the school feeding program, and even in some cases where learning materials, were provided for these children, for free or at a subsidized rate. Yet, some parents still have their children, at home during school hours, or they even have them hawk on the street.
Let me tell you for free that there is no single Nigerian parent as we speak today. Forget about the question around Islamic sort of education. Of course, another form of education has been put forward in that regard. But since we are not going there, the Shanghai education, but since we are not going there, there is no single parent in this country. Because most of the time, we think that the northern part of the country are not well informed. But these people are actually well informed because we have done a research that shows that every parent at every household want their children to be like Kamala Harris, or want their children to be like Okodo Iweala, or want their children to have one, because that's the essence of why these people have naturally been gravitated towards making sure that their children obtain a quality education in this country. But like I said, the room for that was not created by the government of the day. And it's not only this government, but all the successive government in this country has not made that to be practicable in this country. During my own father's time, he attained free education. Most of my cousins and siblings from OAU and UI, they are attaining quality free education. During our own regime and all of that, but what do we have today? My father had to tell me that my own Aluta Hall or something like that was their own feeding meal hall where they used to come together and eat. But that does not happen in most of the schools now. But what we are saying now is that let this government make education attractive by improving the funding on education, improving the lives of the teachers, improving the infrastructure in those schools, and make the environment secure, safe for everybody.
Okay, so would you suggest that the homegrown school feeding program be abolished, and that monies allocated for that, be expended on other, critical issues in the education sector?
No, I will not say it should be abolished. What I will say is that government should increase funding on education. Government should make sure that those schools where there are kidnappers, those schools, there are still schools in this Abuja which they are only using tents as their structure. We have them around Babalata and others. In this FCT Abuja, there are schools like that without them.
Did you say tent?
Tent. Just a tentative structure.
Okay.
In this Abuja. We have those that are studying in the corners under trees. We have enough resources in this country. Don't let us be deceived. The government just allocated about 30% of this whole national budget for themselves and for the ex-president in this country.
I'm sorry to butt you, comrade, right? So let's not, blow things out of proportion. But when you say that there are schools in the core north where people actually learn under trees, don't you think there is too much?
After this program,
yes,
I can share a document with you.
All right, please do.
Research which was recently conducted by one of the NGOs in Abuja.
All right.
I can share it with you.
Thank you very much, comrade. But don't you think that there is too much concentration, on the federal government as opposed to the state and local government? Because if you have children learning under trees in core northern state, should that also be the fault of the federal government or state government?
Yes. All of them share the blame. Number one, even the question of the local government autonomy that has been put forward is not enough totality honest approach. Even till today, we still have in most of these local governments where the state, even those that have conducted their election or elections. Okay, for instance, they are about to conduct election in Osun State, but it's still the same people who have been handpicked by the current administration and also have influence. I don't want to talk much on that, but the point is also that these people, both at the local level, government level, state government, federal government has fault. They have fault in this. But the point is that the federal government should show they say leadership by example. Even those ones they are catering for, what has been the result? We have not had any positive result from all of them. And most of the state government governors should also be held accountable or responsible for all of this. But the point is also that they are also dancing to the tune or the templates which has been given by the federal government, because the system where we have commercialization, privatization, and all of this, these are systems that encourages corruption, and that if it's being practiced at the center or at the central, it also means that it will percolate to the grassroots, and all of these policies are also being fed at the local level. So it's not only enough to point the finger at the federal government. We have to equally point at the states, and of course, in the coming period, we are going to see if the local governments are all academically going to be autonomous, as the government has put forward. But it also has some sort of political tone in it that the federal government want to shift all of the blames on the state government to see, in order for people to take away that
is an assumption, right?
Okay.
That's an assumption.
Okay.
Comrade, I'll let you hold your thoughts because we're due for a commercial break, and we'll just go pay these bills very quickly, and then when we return, we'll also open the studio line for those listening out there to also call in to share their thoughts on this topical issue. This is Eagles Outlook live on Eagles FM 102.3 Abuja, and we're trying to juxtapose or even assess the justification or otherwise of 60 billion naira allocated for the National Homegrown School Feeding Program in the 2025 budget. How justified is this vis-a-vis issues that you think would most likely shape Nigeria's basic education in the year 2025? Don't forget, the focus is heavily on basic education in Nigeria. Do join us after this timeout.
Eagles 102.3 Abuja.
My country people, who work suppose enjoy you after all the hustle. You not supposed take your comfort play to fit sleep the way it supposed be. Make you go grab a yo-yo Eurofoam mattress. Make you forget your full comfort. Whether na Euro Spring, Euro Orthopedic, or semi-orthopedic, Diamond and Diamond Plus. And for Comfort Pro Max, Eurofoam don't introduce latest in town. That na Euro Elite. This one, they sleep jolly meant no get equal. Eurofoam get quality pillows and sheetings. Eurofoam shop Yakpa everywhere for Bodo Nigeria. Eurofoam, sleep the way it's supposed.
Has anyone told you can talk about your business on radio for just 20,000 naira? Get a chance to talk your business for 25 minutes on The Entrepreneur. Mondays to Fridays, 3 p.m. on Eagles 102.3 FM Abuja. For more inquiries, call 090-9984-4433. 090-9984-4433. Hurry now.
My My people, the thing where they happen for my area, eh?
Do you think I will now find out that you have contract to bring fresh girls?
I brought you from the gutters. Who gave you all the connects? MDG who? Without me, you would have been nobody. But I
Join Media Coalition and Awareness to Halt Human Trafficking, MICAT, on I Wish I Knew radio drama every Saturday at 10 a.m. Let us join hands and kick human trafficking out of our communities. I Wish I Knew radio drama, brought to you by MICAT in partnership with the National Agency for Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NATIP, and funded by the Embassy of Denmark in Nigeria.
My country people, who work suppose enjoy you after all the hustle. You not supposed take your comfort play to fit sleep the way it supposed be. Make you go grab a your Eurofoam mattress. Make you forget your full comfort. Whether na Euro Spring, Euro Orthopedic, or semi-orthopedic, Diamond and Diamond Plus. And for Comfort Pro Max, Eurofoam don't introduce latest in town. That na Euro Elite. This one, they sleep jolly meant no get equal. Eurofoam get quality pillows and sheetings. Eurofoam shop yakpa everywhere for Bodo Nigeria. Eurofoam, sleep the way it's supposed to be.
Eagles 102.3 Abuja.
Right, welcome back from that break, and thank you for staying with us. If you are just joining us, this is Eagles Outlook, live on Eagles FM 102.3 Abuja, your radio experience you can count on. And today we are looking at, the 2025 budget and, of course, the plans by the federal government, to spend 60 billion naira on, the national homegrown school feeding program, at this year. And we've been made to understand that this is actually part of, efforts to improve education and nutrition among children. But my guest, who's, on the show this morning, Comrade Daniel Alconde of Safe Public Education Campaign, is, of course, he has, some reservations in this regard. But you can actually be part of the conversation this morning by calling us on the studio lines. Let's hear from you what you make of the topic of discussion this morning. How justified is, the 60 billion naira built to be expended on, school feeding program for the year 2025? And of course, issues that you think, would shape Nigeria's basic education this year. All right, the numbers to call are 090-7353-0044 or 090-8766-8888. You can also send a voice note or a message to the WhatsApp portal on 090-9705-4450. You can only send a message, as a matter of fact. Please, you must forgive me. We won't be able to take voice notes. Just send, a message to the WhatsApp portal on 090-9705-4450. So let's hear from you what your thoughts are. I'm coming back to you now, Comrade. Looking at the situation of things, aside this school feeding program that you're not really too comfortable with because of the fears of, diversion of funds, by way of corruption, what else would you suggest, or how would you even begin to help the government get sense? When I say the government now, I mean the federal, the state, and even local government. How would you help them get sense of the right thing to do, by way of encouraging children, to return back to school and even to make learning, accessible and even cheaper if you like, in our modern day Nigeria?
Yes, thank you very much. I think the first step to talk about is that government should be willing, have that zeal, have that willingness, or that will to actually make education functional in Nigeria by funding it adequately. That's the very first point. The second thing that government is to do is also to make the teachers the government should encourage the teachers. And how can government encourage teachers? Teachers in Nigeria, as we speak, earn less than $42 in a month. Less than. Even the analysis around the current 70,000 naira minimum wage is that it's below $40 as compared to when they were even earning 30,000 naira, when it was around maybe 82 or $79. But of course, significantly, what it means is that why the figure of that minimum wage increase, the quality of what you get in market, the quality of what that amount of money can buy, the value of that money itself is not there. So that even that 70,000 if it's being implemented, fully implemented, you cannot see resolve the crisis, the economic crisis at home, in different homes. So that government should increase the minimum wage. The proposal that we put forward as a reasonable organization that we put forward for this government when the debate of increase in the minimum wage was online was that 250,000 naira should be the new minimum wage. But the government said they don't have money and this and that, and of course they don't have money, but they build 5 billion or 10 billion house renovated an apartment with about 10 billion naira or thereabout. They bought new private jets, did so many things, and there is no money. We understand that. But government should encourage the teachers by paying a very, decent amount of money as their wage monthly. And also, all of these teachers should be sent for intermittent or maybe quarterly training and retraining so that they can get themselves equipped as to the current education standard of the world. And of course, the curriculum itself, I would suggest that government should review the curriculum itself to meet up with the 21st century standards. One of the things we were taught at primary school level, using of cardboard to design these, they are not relevant in this 21st century. They are not relevant in the 21st century. Okay. And now what they need to do is to begin to look at how can we also level up the curriculum itself so that it can contain things that can make life better at this setting we are. For instance, there is no school in Nigeria that they teach primary school or secondary school. I'm not even sure of that university that they teach robotic science and AI and all of that. The tech world has become so large that Nigeria at this current period, even with all of the civilization of expressions of our leaders, they still don't find it relevant to get all of those courses in most of our schools. The high unity schools, in the olden days, what we know them to be is to be creative and innovative. As technical school then, I knew my cousins that could build, that could construct a well-meaning chairs and other things at that point in time. But what are they doing currently? They are not learning that all. And it does not match the advancement and the current realities in the world today. Right. That all of those curriculum are outdated and cannot even guarantee a quality student at the end of the day if they continue to stick to that kind of curriculum. Another thing is also that the question of security. This budget, the federal government has put 4.91 trillion naira. 4.91, yes, I'm correct. 4.91 trillion naira has been budgeted to defense. That itself, we know how it's been handled in the past. But can we have a democratic, committee that can begin to review how those money were spent in the past and what can we do better in this period to make sure that all of this money were adequately used in defending the harmless Nigerians, in defending the Nigerians against the armed robbers and against kidnappers. But this money itself is not adequate, it's not enough. But another thing is also that the reason why most of the terrorist activities in the north and other parts of Nigeria are so rampant is because of the fact that the quality of living in Nigeria, the economic situation in Nigeria, is the sole reason as to why Nigerians are committing crime. They say Nigerians are doing yahoo yahoo. But what we have in government today is how money will be allocated for road building or road construction, and that money will be diverted. I spent a quarter of my life behind bars last year, But what I'm saying is that the Nigerians who are looting these resources while giving bail on the platter of gold, before my bail could be granted, it took almost 3 weeks to perfect a bail. But these people have been granted. People are stealing billions of our resources.
Okay,
Let's go. So, comrade, sorry. What I'm saying in essence is that we should use these resources to adequately fund this defense sector so that we can have a security operative that are also motivated because of the wages that they are collecting that are actually that is meaningful. And also with the equipment, the ammunition that they have at their fingertips, and with the constitution of the Democratic Committee, which will monitor how much ammunition did you go out with, how much did you spend on this ammunition, who is responsible for this area, which general collected this money and never refunded it, which general collected money for fueling of cars, and when you call up, for instance, if you call up police, they will tell you they don't have fuel.
Okay.
And who are responsible for those things, they should begin to question all of those people and bring them to justice.
All right, because of time, let's quickly take some of the contributions we have on the WhatsApp portal this morning, so you can just react to them and make your submission. Let's take this call first of all. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning to you. All right, you might want to call back. Abbas reporting from Duse says, good morning, Omoefe. And I guess the crux of the matter, which is school feeding, go around most public schools and see this, students for yourself, very malnourished. How will a child that is hungry concentrate on learning an empty stomach? We should stop this consistent habit of criticizing every government policy while our state and local governments are doing nothing. They ought to have been mandating youth corps members to help out in schools that are lacking teachers. Furthermore, what we should also be asking is government build up, from the schools feeding programs or to provide or to provision of educational infrastructure, and even that will be conducive enough, for learning and proper enlightenment to parents of these children to send them to school. This is what is actually needed now, not condemnation. Besides, people stealing money is meant for educational development are our brothers and sisters, saddled with the responsibility to see that this policy actually scales through. Who do you blame? All right, Abbas is actually, asking that question. Who do you blame? Abbas, thanks for that message. Let's take this call. Hello, good morning. All right, a miss right there. Do want to call back. And then Turkin Bihundu says, good morning, Ife. I greet your guest. I'm in Nasarawa State. Government at all levels, they failed to invest enough in education. Millions of children are out of school, especially in the northern part of the country. Teachers are poorly paid. No motivation on the part of teachers. School feeding program is good. However, people in charge of the program will always find a way to embezzle the funds. Example, during Buhari government pupils were actually at home for COVID-19, yet, the minister said that children were fed, with billions. We wonder if the children were actually fed at home. Turkin Bihundu there. Of course, that actually sparked, a lot of controversy at the time. But because of time now, comrade, one would actually wish that we continue with this conversation extensively so we can indeed get, views from people, views and counter views. But at the end of the day, what exactly are your expectations? And regardless of the school feeding program for this year, what, are the issues that you think, will most likely shape Nigeria's basic education this year?
Yeah, thank you very much. My expectation, or my expectation this year is that, just like what we had last year, there won't be any much different. In short, it won't be shocking to hear that there are more numbers of out of school children this year, more than what we had last year. And the reason to that is very clear. Even most of the friends and family members that traveled are still putting phone call to all of us that are here to help sort themselves back to where they traveled from, for instance, back to Abuja. And that itself shows what the current economic state is. For instance, we just had children which actually died from stamping struggling for the bowl of rice and probably maybe a lap of chicken in 3 different places in this country. And that we pretend as if nothing happened, and we shift the blame to the doorstep of the organizers of those programs. These are not correct. The blame should be shifted to the center. The policies which the government has continuously implement has made the lives of many Nigerians miserable. And I'm talking with all sense of understanding the concepts and the content of what this economy is talking about. They said the fuel has reduced by some cobbles, but as that reflects in the market, chicken in the market is still sold for 40, 45, 30, and 35.
Let me ask you, whose fault is that? Is that
my expectation?
Right.
Sorry, I'm going to your point.
Okay.
The question. So my expectation will not be different from what we have seen last year, and from what the proposal or the budget which has been put forward for education this year, which has on itself has fixed follow as to what should be expected this year, which is the continuous education in the state of comatose, the continuous deficit on the basis of number of those to be enrolled, and increase in now the numbers of out of school children, and more numbers of possibly all of the crimes that have been committed in most of these schools, kidnapping, etc., and all of that. So we can't with what is before us now, I can't assume that anything meaningful or positive is going to happen in the sector this year. But of course, what I advise government to do, since 60 billion naira has been put forward, is also to, maybe in most of these states, they should set up committee, a democratic committee, which will include the parents, the teachers, the community leaders, the religious leaders, and so whatsoever, to actually monitor the inflow and outflow, how this money is being spent in most of the schools and states and the areas. Right. But of course, that itself will not automatically increase the number of enrollments in most of the schools, because the question still boils down to the living conditions of the mass of the working class, which are the parents of these children in the first place, and which their lives have been made miserable with poverty, endemic poverty that's before them with the current reckless economic policies of privatization, commercialization, and the devaluation of currency as we see today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Daniel Akonde of Save Public Education Campaign. Thank you so much for spending part of your time with us on the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me. And my apologies, so I couldn't make it physically.
It's okay. Thank you very much. Right. Well, that'll be, the size of the